Hey, everybody, welcome to Coffee with John, the series, What Are You Good At? That I co-host with Jeff Gunsberg with Title Connect. Jeff, it's great to always co-host with you, and we're looking forward to talking to Reed Nyffeler, who there's a lot of things we need to talk about in 20 minutes, Reed, with you. But we got your books. Real quickly, you're the CEO and founder of Signal, a fast-growing, industry-leading security service franchisor. You also founded FilterGo, a national HVAC filter replacement service, and an air care business called Frame Brand. But I don't even know if we're going to have time to get into that because we're going to be talking about leadership. You've got 3 books: Transform Through Purpose, Lead Exponentially, and your new book coming out called Brand New. Okay, so let's kind of dive in because we were quickly talking before we went live about leadership and the leadership of emerging and new leaders. Okay.
Yeah.
No. So my question is, take the name of your books, Transforming Through Purpose. Let's start with that and kind of getting core into the generation that you're talking about, getting in alignment with their purpose. How are you guiding them to that?
Yeah, if we kind of look back through history, I think, it starts, I kind of did research on American history, right? When in the 1800s, here we're celebrating our 250th anniversary, right? And we went from a non-existent economy
Happy birthday
to the world's largest, right? And, that evolution is really taking that generation of 20, 30-year-olds that led the economy to where it's at today. And if you look at the late 1800s, the majority of the people were still farmers. And then the advent of the tractor drove them into the factories. And they became your factory workers, and Ford and all these organizations started building on that because they could, a tractor took away many farmers' jobs, right? Because a tractor could do what a human 100 humans could do probably. And then you saw that in the factory workers. The assembly line took away your artisans that were building the cars, and they made it, and it accelerated cars. And Henry Ford led that charge. And then, of course, we had World War I and II, right? Defending our country and also helping our allies. And they became warriors. And if you look at all the innovation that happened in the 40s, 50s, and 60s that drove the industrialists, that led to the economy of the 70s, 80s, and then you saw technology boom, and that was the next generation, right? You see your Mark Zuckerbergs and Jeff Bezos and Steve Jobs stepping into the tech economy. Well, now all of those are going to be displaced by AI. And so who's going to capture this next generation? As I kind of reflect upon that, I said, who's really reaching out this next generation, right? I was an early email address in college, and then the internet, and we formulated our resumes online, et cetera. Well, now this next generation doesn't look for that. And so then I also look, and I've hired countless people in all my organizations that are in their 20s and 30s. They're not as prepared for the workforce in a traditional sense, right? They don't have the interpersonal communication skills and or the natural just underlying responsibilities of working in a job. I started working at 12 years old. So, some of these kids aren't starting until their 20s. And so that's where the books come from. Because the first thing is Transform Through Purpose is you cannot go and work for an organization if you can't lead yourself well. And so it's understanding what you're good at and then organizing your time appropriately to execute on those items on a daily basis, right? And so if you can begin to lead yourself well, you'll be a great asset for any organization. And then the second book is Lead Exponentially, which is now if you can lead yourself well and you progress in your career. I didn't start my businesses until I was 30, and I was learning how to lead myself well and began in a management sense in my late 20s leading others. And so that's really what that book is about, the premise of leading others. And then I think many businesses fail. This is where Brand New sits, because not because the leader isn't necessarily great, is because they select things that are in their scope of experience, not is an industrial opportunity for growth, right? So what do I mean by that? And that leads to my businesses. It is, if you're a typewriter manufacturer, you may love typewriters, but that industry is not growing, right? You can go step in something that's already been done 1,000 ways to Sunday. You change the name and you have nothing proprietary. You don't grow. But because I think a lot of businesses fail because the interest of the owner is passion about that particular topic, but that is not a market scope that's appropriate. And so that's what that third book is about. And those are the premise with which I launched my businesses. Even though it's a lot of things that are in there, it's there. So FilterGo specifically is designed for those 20-year-olds, right? It's a displacing.
Hold on.
Go ahead. Yeah, we'll take a step back.
I want to kind of digest some of what you just said.
Sure, of course.
Give the listener time to digest. and just kind of ask a couple questions. And I know Jeff will have a couple questions on what you just shared as well. So let's talk about the people that you're talking about today.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think the three of us who are, Jeff, myself, and you are from a similar generation. I don't know. How old are you?
49.
All right. So I'm 54. Yeah, we're all kind of the same age. The difference with how we grew up versus the people that we're talking about right now is we didn't grow up with cell phones, looking down at our cell phones, and had to learn how to communicate, and had way a ton more reps in having to shake hands, communicate, have eye contact, etc. And we did not, at least I can speak for myself, and Jeff's a good friend, did not have helicopter parents. They didn't even know where we were.
Right. Yep.
And so we had to kind of fend through life differently and build life experiences. I don't know of the generations that are graduating today, I don't know if that's an advantage or a disadvantage on how they're coming into the world. And if they understand what their talent is and how to apply that in a way that is connecting with the company versus coming in with, and I don't mean this in a negative way, an overinflated arrogance that they think that they're bigger because their parents relied on them on technology, and so they had kind of a certain role of coming in with a certain level of C-level management type of thing within the family household.
Right.
And how does that person, how do they merge into the world today? How do they merge into the world with confidence, with courage, and humility?
Yeah, I think first we'll talk about, to your point, there's no cell phones, right? And so I remember my first decision maker meeting was going to knock on Johnny's door and say, hey, can Johnny come out and play? And I was 5 years old, right? And so now they're just texting him. So you don't have any adults you're interacting with, right? I mean, and back to your cell phone. And then, access to information. We had to go to the library. Now it's on your cell phones. And so I think, if we look at their strengths to that end, is they can research readily available information very easily. And there's a lot of a tribal element to it too, right? I mean, you have a lot of following that you didn't necessarily had. Our tribe was our peer group in high school. Now they have this huge network per their social media that are ultimately following them, and so they can make decisions organically instead of a TV commercial driving their behaviors. And so understanding that there's a subset of tribes that they're connected to, that can drive the interest, and then how does that benefit organizations? Right, if you get movements of tribes and organizations, where's that fit and slot into that? And they're smaller than a mass movement kind of countrywide. And so I think those are all the things, or the assets are there. There's a tribal movement of high level of connectivity, digitally largely, and deficiency in interpersonal communication. And so how do we find places where they effectively function? But at the same time, there's basic principles, leading self, others, and organizations that are necessary regardless of where you're at.
Yeah. You talk about rapid growth, and encouraging that and trying to create that, and on your site, I'm curious about that, but also purposeful leaders. I think that's a really important thing because we have leaders in our company, and they all have their skill sets, and so it's kind of a two-part question. But, having purposeful people in the right place, I think is huge. And I'd like to demonstrate to the audience how you kind of get there.
Yeah, I think the first step is, one, you kind of look at it generationally. My parents' generation, my mom's birthday was this last week. And a lot of it was as I reflected with her, it was they took opportunity and then had autonomy in their 60s, right? You retire, that's where you get your autonomy. Opportunity, I'll live anywhere, take any job that'll, cover my expenses. Then when I retire, I'll go golf and live where I want to go, etc. My generation saying, I'll take opportunity in my 20s, and then I want autonomy in my 30s and 40s. This next generation, however, they want autonomy, and they said, I want complete flexibility and freedom, and then give me the best job that fulfills that. That's where the opportunity is. So that first group that would take opportunity, they didn't ask questions. Back to the purpose. They just did what you told them to do, and because I said so is their primary vernacular. And my generation's like, wait a minute, I'm going to listen to that because I said so, until I realize, why does it have to be because you said so? This next generation needs to know why. That's where purpose comes in, right? They won't do anything until they understand why, right? What is the greater purpose that this ultimately serves? And so then I think the gap is, here's why purpose in the book initially is important, because organizational purpose is what we are attaching our personal purpose to. So you can get Tom's Shoes, for example, that has this, global purpose of donating. However, that doesn't align with your personal purpose. It's not long-term. And so the transform through purpose thing, what are you created? Mine is through intuitive interaction, a conversation like this, propel leaders, hopefully your listeners, beyond their self-imposed barriers, which is ultimately mental and emotional in most cases, to live out their unique purpose. And so if I understand that, that'll put me on a podcast like this, that I can then share and drive others past their purpose so they can align with an organization that it has its clear purpose. And those two things working together is a multiplier.
Okay. So let me ask you this. Today, your books, they seem to have kind of a trilogy feel to them.
Yep.
Right? Finding your purpose. Once you find your purpose, you lead. And then once you lead, it sounds like your next book is called Brand New.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think as you begin to lead, you start to find your voice and kind of understand what type of leader you are, and how you shift and how you have to transform and evolve based on, your gifts and talents and how people receive you, and kind of move in that way. What's the hard part? What's the hard part of all of this, where people really have to look in the mirror and really get to know themselves?
Yeah. So
what they do about it.
So once you start leading others, that's going to challenge how you lead yourself. Most people think most people get promoted because they're a great individual contributor, right? They do a great job. I'm like, you're my best contributor, so I'll make you now a manager. And the manager's first approach is to say, do what I did because it got me promoted. However, everybody's different backgrounds, different personalities, different geographies in some cases. And so that's where you're like, wait a minute, they aren't doing what I did, or it doesn't produce the same results. And so that's where we recognize it's not about process, about, ultimately the outcome or purpose, right? So our objectives. And so as a leading others, you have to establish boundaries and you get autonomy. I always use it. It equates to a child, right? I mean, we have a child that we're born and they're next to us immediately. And then they get in a bassinet, they can function in that. They get in a bed, then you can navigate their bedroom with all their toys. Then pretty soon, if they can start doing the stairs, we expand their boundaries. Why? Because they performed in the boundaries they had. I think a lot of mistakes people have when they lead others is they do that too tightly or too loosely. The boundaries are not appropriately expanded based on their performance individually inside of those. And as a leader, you're like, do all this stuff. I don't want to deal with it. And I'm not going to train you. So there's a balance between the two. And so it challenges that new leader to say, it's not about just doing it the way I did it. It's about understanding how you can operate within those boundaries of the same objectives. And secondarily is, I'm going to appropriately train you and expand the boundaries when it's appropriate timing, and tell you why I'm not expanding them and what performance will lead to that expanded boundaries. So that's the challenge. And people get frustrated quickly and then ultimately quit on both sides, employee and employer, because it's not structured appropriately.
So AI scares people,
Mm-hmm.
right? If they're not ready to receive the information and how this all goes on. With what you're saying, it speaks to me, because a lot of what I do is person to person, and my business goes in that direction. I'm just curious how you see AI affecting what you're speaking about, and how that changes the course. Because a lot of things I'm hearing now are moving back towards, because of AI, people are moving back towards that interpersonal communication. And very successful folks are telling me, what, like, that's where you need to be in this spot and understand other people and have the ability to communicate directly and, all that. And, I'm just curious how you see that affecting what you're talking about.
Absolutely. I think in the age of artificial, authenticity is currency, right? Because you can see all the fake. And so that's that interpersonal conversation. We have authentic conversations. We can see fake, and fake can be produced in a second, an instant, right? I think there was somebody told me there's like 4 or 5 of the top 10 songs in the country are artificial intelligence generated, right? And so again, authenticity is there, right? We see, however, you have to be exceptional. I think that's the other challenge. If you want to be replaced, be average. That's what AI is. It takes an algorithm of all your average and it makes it above average, slightly above average. It can't be any better. It can't be. How else is it learning, right? And so if you want to be forever valuable, be exceptional, and then be interpersonal. I completely agree. And authentic, right? Because literally artificial is not authentic by definition and by design. And so that's that interpersonal communication. And so learn how to be authentic. Don't just be a bot, a human bot. I mean, what's the point of that? We got plenty of those. Be an authentic individual that can have interpersonal conversations.
Being exceptional.
Love that.
That was great. It seems to me, Reed, that so many people want to be exceptional out of the gates. It takes time to be exceptional, and I grew up and I remember people saying, your 20s are for learning, your 30s are for earning, and I still think that, not that you can't earn in your 20s, but there is a lot of truth to that. And so, how are you guiding people in your books about doing things and delayed gratification versus instant gratification to be, the best to go viral overnight? Because that doesn't happen.
And just to add one thing before you answer, I think it's the expectation, right? Like everyone has this expectation that it's supposed to be easy now. Like you have this,
Right.
You have all these platforms and all this stuff to like make it easy for you. And at the end of the day, it's really not, just like we talked about before, like, the authenticity of the whole thing is not, being in sales, like it doesn't equate, right? Like I find that I'm coming across more and more people who are younger doing what I do, and they think that it should just go. So
yeah, and I think
observation.
Yeah, I agree. And first of all, you can't be exceptional if you always make an exception. This is the exception.
That's a really good line.
You're not exceptional.
I'll give you attribution, Reed.
Yeah, that's right. Because they
love
can't
that.
be exceptional.
You
then the other
can't
thing
be
is,
exceptional. Say it again.
You can't be exceptional if you're always making an exception. Right? I mean, it's like, no, this is an exception. I'm not. This is the one time I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
By the way,
That
simple.
is great.
Simple.
That is
Very simple.
And so then at the same time is look at the power of exceptional. And just because everyone's familiar, in fact, the majority of this generation, they're not cool unless they have an Apple iPhone. Well, Steve Jobs, if you go look at his career, nothing about his career was easy, but he was exceptional. He didn't make an exception. In fact, he would be standard the phone. He wanted Gorilla Glass. Go read his book. He wanted Gorilla Glass. He had to go innovate to make an exceptional phone that people stood in lines hours for and fought so many people, including getting ousted from his organization.
Yeah.
And buying it back and trading stock. And these are the people they fawn over, right? I mean, let's use an example. Another person, Taylor Swift. She's been around 20 years before they became a Swiftie. And I mean, sure, the Travis Kelce may have put her on the map. I'm sure it's the other way around. But I mean, I'll just try to offend some of the Swifties that might be listening to your audience. It seems like your primary audience here. But, but I think that's the whole thing is she practiced that, built a footprint, etc. That's 20-year overnight success. People were telling Jeff Bezos that he should cancel Amazon, and they just passed Walmart, but it was a 20-year plan. They weren't profitable for the first 10 years. That's not easy. And I think everybody forgets that it's a 20-year overnight success because they were consistently doing the same thing they believed in for 20 years.
And the most amazing thing about Taylor Swift is that she said, you know what? I sold my catalog. Here's who owned it. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to re-record every single song I got, and I'm going to own those. And she redid the whole thing. And like has her own catalog now, and she's killing it. It's just she found a new way.
Current generation, Mr. Beast, that guy went exceptional. He started giving away every money he had, every penny. Go look at how he built this global icon. I mean, everything you look at, they forget that they did not make an exception. And they're like, you just made all that money, you gave it away, and he's like, exactly, because I'm compounding it. I mean, if you look at every story, it's because they were exceptional that they follow. Just go look at the people instead of making an exception.
So a couple things. I want to come to a close, and we can have you on again and talk about your businesses. But we're talking about being exceptional, and I want to go into our quick speed round. And part of being exceptional is knowing that success leaves clues. In your example of Jeff Bezos passing Walmart, I've read a little and listened to a bunch of things that talk about how Jeff Bezos, one of the things he did early on was study Sam Walton. He read the book Made in America by Sam Walton. He studied the clues that were left in front of him. So what's a book that made an big impact on you, Reed?
I mean, a ton of books, to be honest. I always refer to the Bible as the one that has consistently made an impact, but even How to Win Friends and Influence People, that was an early one, just because
I love that.
People. It's all about people and authenticity. I mean, that was a book about authenticity and having a genuine interest. So I would say that's one.
What's a book that people wouldn't maybe think about off the top of their head?
By the way, this is sitting here propping up my cell phone right now.
A book they wouldn't think about. One thing that impacted me is How We Got to Now. That was an interesting book by Stephen Johnson. It was about really the evolution of messaging and information, from the printing press and how it drove information to the internet, obviously most recently and beyond, electricity and how that changed the economies, or those who led early into technology, and still has application today with AI, et cetera.
It's great.
What would you tell your younger self, say you're 20 years old? What's the best advice you could give?
Yeah, see a clear vision and don't be deterred, right? I mean, and I believe that I did that through the process by and large, but I mean, I think so many people are going to try to hold you back, right? I mean, and I think a little piece that's there is everybody wants to feel better instead of be better. And so don't worry about feeling better, be better. We always feel better when we are better. Yeah. Right? But so many people are fixated on feelings. And I think the other thing I would say is I remember this turning point in my mind. It said, why me? Instead of why not me? And so just add one letter. Why not? One word, I should say. Why not me? And that gives you so much belief. You become a victor instead of a victim when you say, why not me? And then you're like, because I can. I will. Right? And that drives you forward instead of why me, which is, of course, everybody wants to say why they're victimized.
That's a great thing to end on because I think it's really important. I think you bring up a really good point. Like, no matter what's going on in the world, and people can point to a lot of things that are wrong, but there's also a lot of great things, and we got to be able to take ownership and control of what we can control. And a victim mindset will take you down quickly. And I think it's a really good thing to end on. Things happen, I think, for a reason, and we got to look at it and say, what's the lesson? What do we got to do? And what do we got to do to get through this and make something work? And to your point earlier about, I'm putting this in my own words, but most of the world compete at average. And so if you want to be just a slightly above average, you're above average, and that's where exceptional lives.
That's right.
And so a lot of your inspirational messages today, to me, and this is how I'm interpreting it, you have to intrinsically really connect and look in the mirror and evolve yourself. You have control over that. And I think your messages were great. Your books all sound great. Your businesses we didn't talk about, but I'm sure those are great too, because you're infusing a lot of these messages. But I really tell everybody where they can connect with you, Reed, learn more about you, get your books, all that type of thing.
Yeah. So nextinleadership.com is where I'd recommend them going. That's a site you can find this podcast, among other things, on there. And then if you'd like to be a leader going forward, it'll give you some resource to help you be a leader. So nextinleadership.com.
It's great. Jeff, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, no, amazing. And, I think it's really great for people to hear that you can make excuses, and there's all that going on. I find that, to be exceptional is, a wonderful thing. You just have to kind of shift that mindset away. So wonderful. Yeah.
Awesome. Reed, thanks. This was great. Jeff, appreciate it. Always fun co-hosting with you.
Always.
Reed, appreciate all your wisdom today. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.